Talk to me about some of the areas that have been open for you. I know you've got one for restaurants. Are these currently functional restaurants or things that have passed?
Mostly things that have passed, and I haven't done that systematically, but I have searched eBay and I find from time to time postcards. Apparently in the 40s and 50s, restaurants would have these postcards made that would show the establishment and talk about it a little bit. So I've managed to find some of those on eBay, and I've showcased those and tried to put the relevant comments people have made about it with that. You know, in talking about architecture and so forth, tend to dwell a little bit more on not the high culture aspects, but maybe the just everyday things. Like as a kid, we would drive on 11th Street just for entertainment, and I wasn't even aware that that was Route 66 at the time. You know, I probably knew about the television show, but I didn't know I was really on Route 66 at that time. But there are a number of restaurants and car lots, that kind of place on 11th Street. The things that stuck in my mind, when you're a kid, everything is singular to you.
Of course.
You see this thing and you think, this is the world's greatest version of this. You don't have any concept that in other cities there might be, you know, similar things, but it imprints on you at that young age. It just has something special to it. I think that's a lot of the impetus behind the site, that somehow in looking at these things you can go back and tap that aspect of your own memory. I think with me it had been so long since I'd thought about some of these things, it was like a discovery to come across them. I might not have thought of them for 30 years, and then something comes across and it's more like an archaeological expedition at that point.
When Steinbeck was working on Grapes of Wrath, he stopped off in Miami, Oklahoma to visit a fellow named Charles Banks Wilson, who made his mark as an artist. Then he swung down through Tulsa, spent a couple of days, and was off to California. The book became a classic. Charles Banks Wilson's pieces are all over the world. And Charles spent quite a bit of time in Tulsa, you know, going and coming. His father ran the Coleman Theater for many years, where Will Rogers walked the boards, you know, as a young entertainer in vaudeville. And I find that we've got all of the towns in and around Tulsa share that kind of history. And if you bring it forward and, okay, fine, that's that part of you know, time, that fraction of time. Let's jump forward to say 1945, 1955, 1955, 1965, and you start to put those years under a microscope, you find that once again, you've got authors and artists and the like making contributions not just in Oklahoma, but all over the United States, and they're quietly passing through. And they're showing up on your website. I think what you've done, I just salute you, man. I really think you've opened the door to something that down the road, I'd love to see you take a pen to paper and do a book with this stuff.
There's plenty of raw material there, no doubt about that.
What about, can you give me, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but can you give any restaurants that perhaps might be there?
Well, let's see, there's the old Parky's restaurant on 11th Street, and let's see, there was the Town and Country Inn, I think that's in West Tulsa. The story associated with that one I might not want to repeat on the show.
Oh,
it was interesting though.
we like those kinds of things. If it's history.
It's history. The Rose Bowl, of course, and that's something I haven't quite got into yet, or all the old bowling alleys. We've had some information on that. The Beryl Ford collection has been real interesting to use with the site. It's a pretty good match because I've got a lot of text and things that people have said about things, and once that became available from the Tulsa Library, you can start, you know, giving a little personality to these photographs, which you don't have otherwise.
Gosh, so much there. All right, what about amusement parks?
Well, of course, Bell's, dear departed amusement park, and there's one called Skyline out in Jinx, and I remember it particularly because we went there on my dad worked for Warren Petroleum, and they had a company picnic out there. And I thought it was fantastic. They have a whole lake out there. It's a sandy bottom lake, so that you can actually see things. I was, of course, a big sea hunt fan, so I thought this is my chance to actually see something,
Sure.
as opposed to, say, Fort Gibson, kind of muddy. But they had what was at that time the largest roller coaster in the world. I was too scared to get on it myself. If you see the pictures of it, it goes actually into a ravine and comes around. I mean, it's huge, but
It's gone now?
it's gone. Yeah.
Any pictures out there you know of?
Well, as a matter of fact, one of the readers, Brian Crane, who happens to work at RSU, sent me several shots that he had taken in the 90s, sometime after the park's demise, and then also there were some from the early days of that, and kind of juxtaposed those on the site so you can see what's happened to it. And I think now it's kind of a, I wouldn't say bed and breakfast, but something kind of like that. So at least it's doing something.
I'm sitting here thinking, give me more. Come on, talk to me about some more. Is this a shot that we were talking about?
Yeah.
That you were talking about?
That's it. There's the sandy beach, and looks like the photographer's about to go for a pretty good ride there.
But you never made that
I didn't. I was too chicken.
soul trading venture. What about pop culture icons?
Well, let's see. We've got, of course, there's Lee Woodward and King Lionel, and both of them separately are still contributors to the site. Last week, Lee Woodward wrote in talking about electronic media in general, and then Lionel himself followed up commenting on his right-hand man and that sort of thing. But that's certainly one. Of course, Gaylord Sartain from the Mazeppa show, he's written in a number of times, and that's one I have a particularly personal connection with, since I one time actually went down to the studio and accidentally got on the show.
Oh.
There were
I used to watch that show religiously. My goodness sakes, talk about memories. I was trying to think, Don Woods and Gusty would be considered icons, would they not?
Oh yeah, I got my own Gusty about 9 years ago, so I feel good about that.
Before I moved here, and I don't recall it being here prior to that, but did they have a Bozo?
There was a Bozo, and I was on Channel 8, and I remember it being kind of a dramatic show, at least from my perspective at the time. They did these kind of running skits where there would be dramatic moments, and they'd cut to commercial and so forth. But yeah, I think we had a particularly good Bozo here.
We got one here in the studio, I got to tell you. Landmarks.
Landmarks. Let's see. Well, of course, there's the Channel 2 studio. You were talking about architecture a little bit earlier. I think it was Koberling was the architect on that. So that's one of those Art Deco things of Tulsa that are of interest. And
that building, pardon me for interrupting, survived a tornado that hit the Brookside area several years ago. I mean, the walls are incredibly thick. And I think the steel shutters on the windows still close on the very front. I think I'm right on that. I could be mistaken.
There's a photo on my site taken in the immediate aftermath of that tornado. And you can see that there, I think next door was a Shakey's Pizza. The old Shakey's sign is just bent over like that.
Really?
And there's destruction all the way down the street. I think it was a Don's Playboy Burger. It used to be at that down the street from there. But looks like Mr. Koberling did a pretty good job on that place.
Built a pretty solid structure. I recall there was a drive-in on Peoria when it was the Restless Ribbon. And I'm sorry, I'm at a loss. I can't recall.
Maybe thinking of the Riverside, possibly?
Well, no, I believe it. I don't know if that was it or not. I just remember a drive-in, back in the early days of drive-ins, where you could pull in, order a burger and fries.
Oh.
And I think, I could be mistaken, but I think as far back as the 50s, they skated to your car.
You're thinking of Pennington's.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And that one's gone to the wayside.
Yeah. Well, at least we have some of the recipes on the site.
You bet.
Black bottom pie and so forth.
Ooh. Ooh.